Hey, Steve Zook here. Welcome back to Polk Sewer Channel and the Guitar Ladder System. Hey, today I want to talk a little bit about, about buying a used guitar and doing a little bit of setup work yourself on a guitar and saving yourself $100, Um, I'm actually holding, I think it's a 2011 all solid wood Martin triple O 15M, and I got to tell you, I'm very impressed with this guitar. And just so you know, I don't say what I say just because I'm trying to sell the guitar. I'd rather just keep everything I get, but the stuff that I find is really has a lot of value for the money. That's the whole basis of my guitar, my little humble small guitar business. Is I really know guitars. I've been doing this since I was around 20, and I'm almost 70 in March. So I bring a lot of experience to the table. So the guitars that I get are a lot of value for the money, which is not easy to find, by the way. But this is a Martin triple O 15. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit. Recently, I think sometimes when you buy a used guitar, you'll ask somebody a question about the setup or what the action's like or whatever. And I'm not saying all dealers, but a lot of people that sell the guitars won't answer those questions accurately. But there's a little bit more to the story than just that, because guitars do shift a little bit in shipping. That's really, really common. And if you get, if you buy a guitar and you're asking them, well, is the action low or medium or high or whatever, it's very subjective. Some people, like this guitar, the action's fine for me, but it might be a little high for some people. But there's things that you can do, very simple things, like for instance, you can just detune the strings, take this saddle out here, and then take a little bit off, just rubbing the bottom of the saddle on sandpaper. My suggestion is to do a little bit at a time, but you can, this is something it can easily be done. You just don't want to overdo it. It's better to underdo it. Better to do a little bit, and then maybe check it. Take a little bit off, but taking the bottom of the saddle, taking the saddle out, and then sanding the bottom of the saddle on some sandpaper, you can lower the action a little bit. Another component to lowering the action a little bit. And again, it's very subjective. Everybody likes it differently. I mean, I do a lot of dad-gad in steel string. And so for me, this guitar is fine. Another thing you can do is just adjust the neck a little bit. Sometimes a guitar has been in somebody's ownership for years even. Maybe they had 12s or 13s on it. Maybe the neck needs a little adjustment. Sometimes I adjust guitars before I sell them a little bit, but everybody likes it differently. So I think one of the main points I'm going to say here is that when you're buying a used guitar and you ask somebody, maybe you tell them a little bit about your guitar style and the kind of stuff you like to play, and then you ask, would it be good for that? Is the action low? Well, everybody likes it differently, and like I said, you shouldn't let that be a reason not to buy a guitar from somebody. If you ask somebody a question and they just answer it like, oh yeah, it's fine for you, I'm sure it'd be perfect, kind of just a feel-good answer because they just want to sell their guitar, I don't think that's good for anybody. But as a buyer, if somebody says, well, maybe the guitar, you might need a little bit of setup, that shouldn't be a reason not to buy the guitar, because that's really minor. Most guitars need setup. Even if the guitar is set up kind of how you like it, which you won't know till you play it. In shipping, it can change a little bit. So my point here is you should not buy a guitar from somebody if it's a great guitar, a great value, but it might need a little bit of setup, and you can do a little of that yourself. Like this guitar, for instance, just sounds unbelievable, and it's got some flame on the neck, which is super, super rare. Like 1 in maybe 2,000 would have this. It's got some flame in the neck, and it's really a great guitar. I recently had somebody ask about it. I'll just share this. And they told me a little bit about their playing style. And then they said, well, is the action low? And I thought about it. I thought, I'm going to try to tell this guy as much information as I can to help him make it feel. But my point here is that when you're buying a guitar, if somebody answers your question in a way like, if they just say, oh yeah, it's low action, it'll be perfect for you, that's kind of bullshit. If somebody's honest with you and says, well, it might need a little bit of setup, you could either pay somebody to set it up how you like it or do some of it yourself. That's a better answer. That should make you feel better about that person as a seller, because anybody can just give kind of a cookie cutter answer. Oh yeah, it's fine, it'll be great, But I'd rather, tell somebody the truth. And so again, things you can do if you want to lower the action, sometimes even just putting on a lighter gauge strings. You can put on a set of 11s or a set of 10s. That will lower it a little bit. You can adjust the truss rod a little bit. You want to do a very little at a time though. Take the saddle out, sand the bottom of the saddle on some sandpaper. Just do a little bit at a time. Don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, you might need to get a new saddle. Just do a little bit. On the nut, it's pretty easy to get a nut out. What somebody told me what to do is you get a little block of wood. And this is obviously way too big, but you put a piece of wood in front of the nut, and then you kind of tap the end of the wood, like if this was a short. Maybe I can. Let me see if I have a short piece of wood here. I could give a little bit better example here. I may not have one handy, but if you have a short piece of wood, I'll use this as an example, not the best example, but if you have a short piece of wood, you just put that piece of wood at the beginning of the nut, and then tap the end of the wood. That way you're not going to worry about chipping the bone nut or the plastic nut, and that nut should just come out, or you can tap it from the side, But if the nut, if it's a little high there, you can then sand the bottom of the nut a little bit. If you need to raise it, you can put a little piece of, like a little shim under the nut. But my point here is that sometimes one of my roommates is not real mechanical, but she actually recently lowered the action on her acoustic guitar and did a beautiful job just by taking out the saddle and sanding the bottom of it. So what I'm saying is, don't be afraid to do a little minor setup yourself. But the main my main point is, if you're thinking of buying a guitar from somebody, like this is a good example, because this really has a beautiful tone. It's not an average triple O 15M, and every guitar is a little bit different. Even Chet Atkins said that. So there's a lot of value in this guitar. But if somebody asks me if the action's real low, and I say, well, it's not real low, but it's fine for me, but you might need to do some setup, that shouldn't be a reason why you decide not to buy the guitar if it's a great example of that guitar. Because a little bit of setup, sometimes you buy a new guitar and you have to have it set up. But my point here is that if you're buying a guitar from somebody and you ask them a question like, is action low and everything, and if they don't give you the exact answer that makes you feel all warm and cozy, that's a good thing, because they're being honest with you. And everybody likes a different kind of setup anyway, and you can do a lot of times you can do it yourself, or you can pay somebody, but that should not be a reason why you do not buy a guitar. If you ask somebody a question and they give you an answer that just makes you feel all warm and cozy, it's not necessarily the truth. I'm not saying all sellers do this, but it is common in this guitar game. So don't let the fact that somebody says, well, it might need a little bit of setup, don't let that scare you, because like in this case, this is a really high quality, all solid wood, all solid mahogany guitar with some very rare flame in the neck, which is super rare. And this guitar can push around guitars going for thousands, It's really a great value. But like I said, simple things, do a small adjustment on the neck. I don't think the neck's this neck looks pretty good to me, but it probably could be a little bit adjusted, which would lower the action a little bit. Somebody could also put like a set of 10s on here. I think I got 11s on it right now. Somebody could and again, I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to make the point that, setup is really let me get this closer just for a second so you can hear it. But setup is very subjective, so, you know, this guitar just sounds beautiful. You shouldn't let the fact that somebody says a guitar might need a little setup, depending on how you like it. Don't let that scare you off from a guitar, because you could buy a guitar that might be set up like you like it, and it could just maybe not have as much vibe, as much sound, as much voice, as much overtones, as much ring. So this is kind of a couple subjects I'm talking about today, which is one, you know, don't be afraid to try some minor things on a guitar, like sanding the bottom of the saddle a little bit. You know, if you need to sand the bottom of the nut a little bit, if you need to adjust the neck, again, do all this in small increments so you don't overdo it. But yeah, like I said, like this is a good guitar for what I'm talking about, because you know, all guitars are different. You can't say every, you know, Martin Triple O 15M all solid mahogany guitar sounds the same. Every guitar sounds a little bit different. Again, this one has, you know, flame mahogany, which is actually quite rare. Most of the flame mahogany came from a tree called the tree in Belize that was huge, and they finally got the money to haul it up a ravine, you know, but most of the flame mahogany came from this famous tree in Belize. I even talked to George Gruen about it. So my point just being, you know, if you're looking at a guitar, especially like with this guitar, I've got a video of it on my Pokesoo channel. If you see a guitar and you hear it, you dig the sound of it, you know, don't let the fact that it might need a little setup work scare you off from buying it, because you're going to get a great guitar. It'd be like, I mean, it's kind of a weird, maybe non-related example, but to make my point, you're looking at a car. Let's say it happens to be whatever kind of car, but maybe a couple of the tires need replacement. That would not be a reason not to buy the car, you know. Also, if you get the action too low on an acoustic guitar, you lose a little bit of tone. So anyway, don't be afraid to try some simple things. Like I said, there's a girl that lives here with me, who's a great guitar player, songwriter actually. And she recently just took the saddle off of one of her guitars and sanded the bottom, and it came out beautiful. She could have paid somebody $100 for a setup or whatever. Some people charge even more, you know. But don't be afraid to try some things like that. But again, if you're looking at a used guitar, and this can even apply to a lot of new ones, because some companies do setups on them, some don't. But everybody likes a different action. But let's talk mostly about used guitars. If you're looking for a used guitar and you're looking at a certain guitar, especially if it has a video and you like the sound of it, and maybe you ask a question. Well, you know, I play this kind of style. You know, is the setup low? Would it be good for this kind of style? It's really hard to answer that question honestly, because everybody has a different feel. But even if, you know, like I said, some people selling a guitar would just say, oh, it's low action, you're going to love it, it'd be perfect for you. That's kind of bullshit, you know. You don't really know till you get the guitar. So my thought here is, even if a guitar needs a little bit of setup work, don't let that scare you off from buying it, because the guitar could be very, very special in terms of sound and wood and the vibe and the overtones. This is a great example, because I've played other Martin Triple O 15Ms, and they sound pretty good, but they don't have the sound this one has. And they didn't have the flame mahogany, which I do believe adds to the sound. Some people like to argue with me about that, but I think everything on a guitar adds to the sound, and it's just really beautiful too. But this is a lot of guitar. I think I have it at $12.99. Has a hard case. Maybe a little wiggle there, you know. But yeah, this is really a nice guitar. I mean, I might adjust the neck on it, maybe bring the saddle down a little bit. But you know, somebody might want to buy it with the action as it is now. So I kind of hate to mess with it, because I've got 11s on it, and it feels pretty good. It could probably come down a little bit, you know. I guess I could sand the bottom of the saddle and maybe tighten the truss rod a little bit, or even just put on a set of 10s. But kind of rather let somebody else do that, because the guitar, can be dialed in how they like it. But again, my main point, and like I said, this guitar really has a sound. And I think a lot of people don't realize how great mahogany is. Just a beautiful, beautiful wood. It's got some of the best mid-range and mid-bass around, and mid-range and mid-bass is where the magic is, guys and gals. That mahogany is just a beautiful wood. One of the best guitars I've ever owned was an old 30s Martin. I had two of them. 0017 pre-war Martin, went for a lot of money. But again, my main point is there's some sellers that will just tell people what they want to hear. Oh yeah, it's fine for that style of playing. Oh yeah, the action's low. Then you get the guitar and it's not. The guitar could shift in shipping. That's very common, by the way. Or the person's just the kind of seller that just says what they think you want to hear to sell the guitar. But what I'm saying is, don't be, if somebody answers your question and says more honestly, well, you might need to have the action lowered a little bit to fit your style. It depends how you like it. Don't let that scare you off from what could be just a lifelong friend and a really great guitar value. Because setup is not rocket science. We're not talking particle physics here, And like I said, even if you're not a luthier, even if you're not super mechanical, like I said, one of my roommates is a great guitarist, songwriter, and she recently took the saddle out of a guitar and sanded the bottom and dialed her guitar in perfectly. A luthier probably would have charged her, $7,500 to do maybe that and adjust the neck and goof around with it a little bit. So don't be afraid. In fact, I remember I bought an archtop a while back, and it was a little out of whack. So I just adjusted the neck on it a little bit. I actually took the whole floating bridge off of this archtop guitar and sanded the bottom of it and brought the action down reasonable. And the guitar came out beautiful. I don't charge people for doing setups. I don't do setups, generally speaking. But my point just being, if you're positive and you just kind of do a little bit at a time, it's amazing what you can do. But I ended up getting the guitar to where it played really nice. And I was able to tell somebody when I sold it, yeah, it plays nice, And so anyway, don't be afraid to do little things like take the saddle out, sand a little bit off the bottom. If you have to, sand a little bit off the bottom of the nut, or you might need to put a little shim under the nut to raise it up a little bit. A while back, I had a guitar that I kind of did some setup on, and it actually, the neck was way over tightened, and some of the notes weren't sounding. A lot of notes in the first position weren't down here in the first 4 or 5 frets weren't sounding. Once I backed off the neck, everything kind of, because it was hitting frets up here because the neck was over tightened. So anyway, my point being, buying a used guitar, there's a few components to it. But just because you ask somebody, I feel like sometimes when I'm honest with people, some potential buyers will kind of get scared away because they think, oh, it's not a low action like I like it, But better to be honest with people. I try to tell people, it's a subjective thing. I told this one guy, well, this guitar is fine for me, but if you like a low action, you might want to lower it a little bit. Maybe try some things on your own if you need to do a setup. And I think I offered the guy $100 off of my price. But, don't let that, keep you from what could be a really great guitar. Because you might buy a guitar from somebody where the action is low, probably pretty close to how you like it, and it could be kind of a dog. You could not ring out, not have as much overtones as another guitar, not have as nice of wood, not have the magic mojo, So this guitar sounds. This is a lot of guitar. I did a review on this a while back. But all solid mahogany guitar for $12.99, and like I said, there's a little wiggle there. I don't have a ton of wiggle, but this guitar really has a sound. It's got a small little crack on the side. It's really hard for me to find it, which is kind of a good thing, right? It's very small. I think it's about 1 inch or so. I can't even see it right now, but it's nothing to worry about. But yeah, this really. So my main point is, don't be afraid to try some minor things and set up on your own. And if somebody doesn't give you just kind of a bullshit, oh yeah, it's got action to be perfect for you, don't let that scare you off. Most guitars do need a little bit of setup, and that shouldn't scare you off from getting a really, really great guitar that will be your friend for years. Like I said, I could, maybe tighten the neck a little bit on this one, maybe take a little off the saddle, but I used to pay somebody to do setups for me, but then a lot of people, I like it higher, I'm a blues player, or I do this, so I kind of hate to mess with this a little bit because I do a lot of dad gag. And it's really nice for me right now. Another thing you can do is, like, if your action's a little bit high, just put on a set of 10s, because then the neck's going to be a little bit straighter. But my point is, don't be afraid to try some minor things like sanding the bottom of the saddle. Do a little bit at a time, maybe a little bit more than a little, but don't overdo it because you don't want to take off so much that you get it too low. So simple things can be important. And again, if you're buying a used guitar and somebody asks about the action, and you're buying a used guitar and you ask about the action, if they don't give you an answer that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, that's not a reason to not buy the guitar. Because some people just aren't honest about it. Just to cut to the chase here. And so if somebody says, well, you might need to have it set up how you like it, you might want to lower the action a little bit yourself or have to pay somebody to do it, don't let that scare you off, because they're being straight with you. But I work hard to find great guitars. I've been playing since I was 8. I'm 70 now. I've been buying, selling, collecting for 30, 35 years. I really know guitars. I'm still learning, which is the best part of this. But I know the great guitars from the average guitars, and that's not bullshit. So, buying a used guitar is an art. But yeah, this thing sounds so nice. It's just got really beautiful tone. These strings are a little bit new, they're still stretching a little bit. So again, when you're buying a used guitar, there's some sellers that will just tell you what you want to hear because they want to sell the guitar. Then you get the guitar, it's like, no, that's not what he said. It could be because it shifted in shipping, it could be because he just bullshitted you, But don't let the fact that somebody says a guitar might need a little setup work, don't let that scare you off from buying the guitar, because it still might be, and often can be, a great, great value and a friend for life, and has a lot more magic mojo than something that, that maybe the guy, oh yeah, it'd be perfect for you. It's a low action, Again, it can shift in shipping, but that's my point I wanted to make. All right, guys. This is really a lot of guitar. I'd love to keep this, but I can't keep every great guitar I get, All right, take care. If you want to email me, stevezook7@yahoo.com. STEVEZOOK. The number 7 not spelled out at yahoo.com. Email me if you want. That's the best way to contact me, or text me 714-548-0385. But yeah, this very, very rare to see a flamed mahogany neck. It's really rare wood. Like I said, most of it came from the tree, which is what it's called. I think I talked with George Green about another matter a while back. He mentioned that because nobody could afford to pull this huge tree up a gully, up a ravine, or whatever you want to call it. And then somebody finally got the financing to do that, and all the flame mahogany in the world came from that tree. So this could be some really rare mahogany, flame mahogany. I'm not sure if you can see that. I don't know what angle you're at, but it's really beautiful, and I believe it adds to the sound. People like to argue with me about that, but I believe everything on a guitar adds to the sound, and this is really a lot of guitar for $12.99. Like I said, maybe a little bit of wiggle if you buy from me direct, which could help you with setup. I can take $100 off the $12.99, but this This is really, really a lot of guitar. I'm really impressed with these, but a lot of them, some of them sound better than others. So anyway, let's all keep the positive faith. I'm trying to show this flame neck. Let's all keep the positive faith. What you focus on expands. Don't be brainwashed by the news all the time. Positive faith, guys and gals. It's powerful. It's as powerful as the wind. And if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. All right, folks. Take care. Stay positive. Keep the positive faith. Focus on positive thoughts. And have an attitude of gratitude that will connect you with the miracle creating force of the universe. Ciao.